Welcome to the Source of Commercial Real Estate. I am your host, Jonathan Hayek. This is where we discuss all things commercial real estate, including finding and funding deals, seeking opportunities, and discovering your competitive advantage. I am your host, Jonathan Hayek, and today I am talking with Angel Williams. Angel, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm really well. Thank you for asking. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Why
Absolutely.
don't we start out with you telling us a little bit about your background and what your work in real estate looks like today?
All right. So my husband and I both grew up in families that invested in residential real estate. So that was where we started. And we still have that portfolio. We've got like 6 singles, a quad, and a couple of duplexes. And that's ours. And while we're not actively seeking out residential properties, if one falls in our lap, we'll probably take a look at it and may buy it. Because we really like the store of value that residential properties offer, and they're fairly easy to take down on your own, right? So from there, about 5 years ago, maybe six, um, we decided that residential isn't very scalable, and we wanted to scale. And so we decided we were going to kind of dip our toes in that multifamily pool. And so we started investing passively in commercial multi. And we did that for a few years. And then in 21, we went active side and we became GPs ourselves. In December of 21, we did our second deal in December of 22. And that's kind of where we're sitting now. My husband is our underwriter, and I do pretty much all things relationships, whether that's vendors or the PMCs or investors. So that's kind of my role, and I stay in my lane. And my husband does basically everything that has numbers to go with it. And that is definitely not my lane. So having him be able to take that on has been amazing. So that's kind of where we're sitting.
Really interesting. And so, tell me a little bit about kind of your work situation. Are you all full time real estate investors? Are you still W-2 employees? What's that like?
So we're both full time real estate. I do still teach some college courses. Every now and then I have a few sections. Well, I say a few. I have like one section of econ every few months. And so I still have I teach a senior level survey course. And then for a local JC here, I do their dual credit seniors. I'll do a semester of that every now and then. And then my husband does consulting still with his commercial, or with not commercial, with his chemical engineering stuff. So he still does he has a few gigs that he does here and there in consulting, but by and large, what we do now is just real estate.
And I was listening to you on another podcast, and I think I'm remembering correctly that you used to be a full time public school teacher.
Mhm. Yeah, I
And
was
so,
in K through 12 for about 17 years.
okay, I'm also a former public school teacher. So, tell me about kind of your decision process from going to the steady income, the future of a pension, to the uncertain world of entrepreneurship and full time real estate investing.
All right. So I actually got my start in private school, and it was because I had a master's in economics and there were no jobs. So I graduated in 2002 with my master's in economics, and well, things weren't so great, and it was really hard to get a job as an economist. And so Jason was finishing up his doctorate. I moved to Lubbock in '03 and discovered that I could teach private school without a teaching certificate. So I started teaching private school. I was literally bringing home $1,001 a month, and I was the breadwinner because Jason was a grad student. Um, and so I did that for a year, and then a public school opportunity came across for me teaching music. And I have a music minor in my bachelor's degree, but I've been playing piano since I was like 4. And so music was a pretty natural thing for me to do. So I actually filled out the application after I was hired to be the K through 5 music teacher in a little town about an hour outside of Lubbock. And I did that for a few years. And then Jason finished up his doctorate. We moved to Wichita Falls, had our first 2 kids. And then I kind of went back and tutored and subbed and did a few things here and there. And I went back full time in 2017 or 2018 in middle school English. So kind of a spread. I've done K through 5 music. I had a 4th and 5th grade contained classroom. And then I taught English, which is kind of funny. And what happened was things just got progressively toxic. And for most of the people that have left education, why do we leave education? Number one, it has nothing to do with the kids. Are the kids hard? Yeah, the kids are hard, but kids are kids. And kids are relatively the same regardless of where you're at. They may be acting out differently due to their environment, but I would venture to say that very rarely is it truly because of the kids. It's usually because of the red tape, the micromanagement, the admin. Those are the things that were really toxic for me. And we were already in a situation where I didn't have to work. I was teaching because I love to teach. And so as things just continued to get more toxic, I decided to leave, and I miss my kiddos. I still miss them to this day. I actually left teaching in February of 2020, right before COVID hit. And I had friends that were still teaching during COVID. And I'm like, you're being harped on by people that have never even taught online. And that was another issue I had because I've been teaching online college since 2007. And so I'm watching my friends get in trouble for not doing what they need to be doing, teaching online, by people who have never taught online. And so I feel really fortunate that I got out when I did. I miss my kiddos, but having the flexibility and the options to leave because of what we had created in real estate, that allowed me to be able to step away. And so that was where that all transgressed and how that moved along.
Tell me more about that last part. You talked about how the you're living the life now and that you've created because of real estate. So tell me about what real estate has created for you. What's life like, and what has real estate done that you weren't able to do with a W-2 job?
So really the first thing we did was we created an educational platform. So we created the Academy Presents Real Estate Investing Rocks. And it is education. We do 2 3-day virtual summits every year. We have 50 to 60 speakers, panelists, roundtable participants, masterclass presenters. It's 35 hours about a pre-recorded content that is totally free. And then there is 3 live days with the panels, roundtables, and masterclasses. And so that's another 21 to 24 hours of content. And then we put all of that in a library, and then we have a subscription program that's like $20 a month, and you get access to, it's about 400 hours of content. And those are all the things that I've done with the presenters and interviewing them and getting to know people. So for me, I went from being a teacher to being a teacher. And so my teacher heart's being filled every day, and I couldn't understand why my husband was not fulfilled. Like, what the heck is going on, Jason? I feel great. I'm having an awesome time. But he was still in a not great, situation with the W-2. And it just dawned on me one day, wait a second. I went from being a teacher to being a teacher. He's still an engineer when he wants to be in real estate. So it worked out for me. And then it eventually worked out for him because this company moved on and they didn't take him with them. And instead they hired him as a consultant for them. And so on the financial side of things, he's doing better with that company now. But the flip side of that is that he's really getting to delve into the real estate side. He's developed his real estate coach or his underwriting coaching program. And so it's been really great for us. And we knew he was going to be losing his job. So we had about a 6-month runway to really amp up what we were doing and get ready to go active side.
I want to ask you more about this education platform that you've got because it seems like a really unique thing. So you've got, from what I understand, I know you've got a podcast, but then you also have this online community. You've got a Facebook group that you're really active in. It looks like, you're doing like virtual meetups several times a week, and you've got a really nice community there. So tell me about your strategy in your online presence. What are you trying to do with this online community that you created, and how is it fueling your business?
Okay, so number one, I have no clue what I'm doing. I've gotten really lucky. I say lucky. I think that the universe was really looking out for us because some things just lined up. When I got ready to do virtual events, Dan Hanford helped me. He gave me tips. We talked on the phone. He gave me a lot of really great advice that I was able to use. My first 2 summits were totally live. After that, I was like, I can't keep doing live events. And so we still do live, but there's that 30 to 35 hours that's all pre-recorded content that comes out on a free tier. And it just makes life a little easier when doing these events because they're not so intensive. We do also, and over the years, I've had friends that help me out. I have friends that they kind of have a panel that they run. Like Brian Briscoe does the capital raising panel. He's done it 3 or 4 times now. So I kind of count on him. Kay Trevor does asset management. He's also done it about 3 or 4 times. So I know I can count on him. And there's certain people like Sandia Shashadri and Vinky Lumba. There's a few people out there that they just come through for me when it comes time for the summits, and they help me fill panels and they give me ideas and we just kind of bounce it off. And so they've gotten progressively easier over time, not just because we've tweaked it to fit what we need, but also because we've grown in our relationships in the community. So I guess the number one thing is it doesn't happen overnight, and you have to give it time to grow and cement in. And then we do a virtual meetup every Monday. It's the Marvelous Mondays meetup. And that one took a long time to get started. There were times when I'll never forget one of the times it was just me and Jason, and we were by ourselves for 30 minutes. And I was like, this sucks. And we can't even get off because we say we're going to be on for an hour. And at the last 20 minutes, one other person showed up. And so we were sharing like underwriting and talking about a deal, and we had to shut that down and have the meetup. But I mean, it was usually, 2 to 8 of us for about a year and a half. And then it finally caught traction. And now we have 25 to 40 people that show up pretty regularly. And so that's really committing to doing it and sticking it out. If you're creating a brand from the ground up, it's going to take some work. Maybe if you've got just a lot of disposable income and you can get a lot of really great coaches that you can basically buy into their circles and get all of their contacts too, it might move faster for you. But there's just a lot of work that has to take place to get a platform going, whether that's a podcast or some other kind of educational program. If you're doing a blog, a coaching program, whatever it is you're wanting to do, they just take time, and you just have to commit to it and write it out. And I mean, I don't know any shortcuts. I don't think there are any.
I think that there's so much good insight and wisdom in there. I think so many people get frustrated and quit with their, with whatever endeavor they're taking on, whether they're starting a business or brand or podcast or YouTube channel, because we're, we want to see immediate results. We think, oh, I started a podcast, so I'm going to put it out on the internet and I'm going to get, it's going to be the next Bigger Pockets overnight. And millions of people are going to listen and download. And when that doesn't happen, with whatever it is, when you're not getting, likes on LinkedIn, when you're not getting people emailing you, signing up for your course or whatever it is, it can be really discouraging when you're sitting there on your Marvelous Mondays virtual meetup and you're talking to your husband for 30 minutes and nobody is showing up, and it's supposed to be this thing. Like, no, this is going to be this big thing and it's going to catapult our business. And it doesn't go on the trajectory like you want it to. How, in that moment when things were a struggle, when things were a slog, what sort of mantras or what were you telling yourself? Were you like, no, I'm just going to stick with it? Or were you like, I don't know, I'm going to give it 3 months. And if it's, not doing anything in 3 months, then I'm giving up? Or like, what was your mindset when things were tough?
So I don't actually know how long it took for us to get traction, because like I couldn't even tell you the first day that we did a meetup. Like I see people that are like, I'm on my 2-year anniversary, my 3-year anniversary. I'm like, I don't even know when we started, because the numbers were so bad that I wouldn't even take a screenshot.
Yeah.
Like I remember the first time I took a screenshot, there was like 12 or 16 people there, and I was like, I'm going to take a screenshot so that I could post it, right?
Yeah.
And there were days when the last thing I wanted to do was get up and have the meetup. But I think one of the best things that came out of the pandemic was the virtual environment that was created, because I can literally turn my lights on, sit up in my bed, put my computer up, and start the meetup. I don't have to look extra special because that's not me. I usually do have makeup on for stuff if it's like recorded, but today was kind of a crazy day, so I just ran in. But it doesn't have to be extra special. And what I'm talking about, like, it doesn't have to be this elaborate setup. And I think that's what happened in the pandemic is people realized that you could have this virtual landscape where people really only care about you waist up so long as you don't reveal anything waist down. And so it just, there was a more relaxed atmosphere. And so even on the days that I really didn't want to do anything, all I had to do was sit up, turn on the lights, and get my computer going. And so it was pretty low key. And it was just that commitment to doing it. We said we were going to do it and we just stuck it out. And when we got started, Jason was still in his W-2. And so he really couldn't participate. He could turn on his little square and it would say Jason Williams, but he couldn't really talk or go on screen. And so he was there purely for support for the first, I don't know, 6 months, a year. Again, I'm really bad with the time frames. But it was more just, we said we were going to do it. We committed to doing it, and you just have to stick it out. And I know plenty of people that when they don't see results in a few weeks, 2 months, 3 months, they bail. And when you're building that brand from the ground up, unless you have amazing connections, it simply takes longer than that. And that's just the reality of it. And people don't always want to deal with that.
Yeah. So you committed to the process, and something I always like to remind myself is that what I'm doing now is going to get better. So whatever marketing you were doing at the beginning was probably not great marketing, but you were at least doing something. And now at this point, you've learned how to market. You've learned how to attract people to, I know you're being hard on yourself, but you are doing more, and you're doing things better
We're doing
than you
better.
were
Yes.
than you were 2 years ago. And you learn, like, you're you or anyone's social media game at the beginning is going to be terrible. You might make terrible posts, and you might not know how to play the LinkedIn game, but you at least start. And that's, I think, the what's the saying, perfection is the enemy of progress. It's like you're not going to start if your standard is perfection. If you're waiting until you have all the information and you know how to do everything perfectly, you're never going to start, because nobody starts out perfectly. And even the people that are crushing it with this kind of stuff are still not doing it perfectly, yet they're having some success with it.
Well, and I've really had to, it was a little bit harder at first, to kind of get out of my own way, but I've really become a huge advocate of done is better than perfect. Just do it. When I think back to what got us started with the very first summit, we said we were going to be doing webinars by the end of 4 weeks or something. We missed it by 1 day. Had I published had we done, like, we released the first webinar by the end of April, we would have made the time frame. It was May 1st, but we started on May 1st. And this is where I got a little bit lucky. I decided that I was always going to record visual and audio. So we've got a lot of content. We've got over 250 podcast episodes, but there's a little trick to that too, because I always record at least 60 minutes, or I try to. And then we split those recordings into 3 podcasts. So if we were able to get 60 minutes or 55 minutes, that podcast guest is going to get an entire week. They're going to get a Monday, Wednesday, Friday release with 3 promos. Again, that was just luck. I just lucked into that. So there's, another 100 and something hours of content there. And because we have video and audio, we can repurpose that in Reels. We can repurpose that in Shorts. We can repurpose that on YouTube. We can repurpose just the audio. We can put it on TikTok. We've got a lot of options. And I think that's another thing that beats people down, is they don't understand that you don't have to recreate content for all these platforms. You can use bits and pieces of the exact same content that you already have. So repurpose, because you're going to look like you're everywhere, but it may be the same 10 minutes of content that different pieces have just been taken out of. So don't overwork yourself too, because you don't have to. And again, we kind of lucked into that. We lucked into that happy little mistake, or that happy little discovery from the beginning, because it was just how we chose to do it. So just when you're out there and you're building your brand, just try and think of ways that you can use what you're doing more than once. It's the same thing we do with our dollars. We're trying to figure out how to use our dollars multiple times, right? Use your content the same way and see how many times you can use it without having to do more.
I like that. That comparison to our dollars, like refinancing our content. So like we, we put it on a podcast, but then we can also put it on YouTube and put it on LinkedIn and Instagram. I want to ask you more about how you're getting like the work done with recycling content. So it's a nice idea to be reusing content, but it does take work to divide your content into clips and the right clips and getting it into the right formats and engaging on social media. Is that your role? Do you like social media? Do you like that aspect? Do you have someone working for you? Do you utilize VAs? How does all that stuff get done?
So we actually hired our first VA probably around a year ago now. She became an au pair and came to the US, but she trained her replacement. So we stayed with the same company. And so we do use a VA now, but we didn't always. And probably the primary way that we're really repurposing right now is we do daily posts. So like Monday we promote Marvelous Mondays because our meetup is that Monday. Now we post the screenshot every single week of the week before because we're proud of the numbers now.
Mm-hmm.
We were proud of the numbers before, but it was just everybody else had these massive pictures. And I was like, I'm not posting 8 people. Sorry. I love you guys, but you're my family and I love y'all, but I just can't. Not when I'm up against Brian Briscoe's screenshot of 50 something people. So it was a comparison thing too, which comparison is also a thief of joy. But we do Tactical Tips Tuesday, we do Wellness Check Wednesday, Thriving Thursday, and then Financial Freedom Fridays. And that Tuesday is where we're going back into previous, whether it's podcasts or sessions, and we're going back through those and pulling tips from the person who was talking. So that's being repurposed into its own graphic on Canva, and then it gets a blurb. And we might attach some articles there in the comments that kind of relate to what the person's talking about, or we may just let it stand alone. I do have like Twitter, TikTok, and those things because we've been wanting to kind of push this idea of the rebel real estate investor, but we just haven't done it yet. And that's another place where we can repurpose. But right now we're primarily repurposing the content for that Tactical Tips Tuesday. But again, we've got plans to integrate it. We do have a YouTube channel too, but we have plans to integrate it into Reels and TikToks and Shorts and all of those pieces too. And we can because the content's already created. Like I said, with the podcast, we probably have 500 hours of content, probably more. It's once you start recording content, it's way easier than you think it's going to be.
And what's the Rebel Real Estate Investor? Let's launch it.
So I've got blue and purple hair. When I left teaching, that was one of the first things I did was I dyed my hair fun colors, and you can't see because again I was coming from a property and my hair is pulled back. And it's partially just because we do things different. I had people when we first got started that said they would never invest with me because I didn't know the numbers. And I kind of waffled back and forth. I was like, do I learn how to underwrite? It doesn't make sense for me because what takes me 24 hours takes my husband 20 minutes. It doesn't make sense for me to try and learn the numbers. Can I do it? Yes, I can. But I can also just memorize numbers. And sometimes that's all people want to hear is they want to hear what's the IRR, what's the cash on cash. I can tell you those numbers. I can't tell you where they come from or why they are. I can a little bit. But if you really want somebody that can dive into the numbers, you're going to talk to my husband. And so we made a decision very early on that we were going to go ahead and embrace that. And so the first time somebody came up to me and said, oh, wait, I'm not going to talk numbers to you. Let me talk to Jason. It stung a little bit. But then I was like, wait a second. This is by design. I don't want people coming to me for the numbers. I want them going to Jason for the numbers. And so it worked. We just really embraced the idea of I'm going to stay in my lane. Jason's going to stay in his. And we're just going to work with that. So that's a little bit different because a lot of teams, they wear a lot of different hats and they have a lot of crossover. And Jason and I really don't. We don't have a ton of crossover because I have no desire to look at spreadsheets. They make me nauseous. All those numbers kind of scare me. I don't know what to do with them. And he's the expert in that. So why am I going to try and learn something when I already have an expert on my team? Even if I started today, I can never mathematically catch up to him, and I'm still going to be a beginner. So that was a decision we made, which is, like I said, a little bit different than some other teams.
It makes a lot of sense. Just dividing up responsibilities with different people on the team. I imagine if someone wants, you know, to talk investor relations or asset management or managing the property manager, they're probably not going to Jason. They're probably going to Angel for those relationship types of things. Whereas, you know, if they want the lowdown on numbers, they know who to go to. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. I want to ask you about working with your husband. Not every couple can do that, and so I'd love to hear just how was this by design? Was it like, okay, we're starting this syndication company together and we're going to work together, or is it like, hey, I need someone to do underwriting, can you look at this? And then, you know, it's gone on for years now. So how has that transpired?
So if we back up all the way to like '07, that was when our first house became our first rental. Jason and I have talked about this so many times, but we don't actually ever remember having a conversation about whether that first house we were going to sell it or it was going to become a rental. It just became a rental. Um, Instead of talking about selling it, we were talking about who's going to do the make ready. And we realized that we were talking to people to get the house fixed up to be rented, and we never even really discussed it. It just naturally progressed into, this is our first rental. And when I think about how things have worked out for the business, as far as the syndication side goes, so our coach told us early on we needed a thought leadership platform. And again, I think everything happens for a reason. And I hated leaving my students, but at the same time, starting an educational platform as our thought leadership platform was a really natural progression. And so it was going from teaching to teaching. And so it seems like things just kind of worked out. And like there were some things that we didn't realize were our superpowers. And so coming to our coach had to send out 2 questions he wanted us to send it out to 5 people. I sent it out to 10 thinking 5 people would respond. And the 2 questions were, you know, what does this person do better than anybody else? And what is this person's natural talent? And I sent it out to 10, 7 people responded. And it was like, Angel will talk to anybody. She'll build an instant friendship. And half the time she has that person doing something for her by the end of the night. And I was like, what? I thought Jason couldn't talk to people because he's like an engineer. He's a doctor engineer. Like, I just assumed that he couldn't talk to people like I could because of his background. I had no clue whatsoever that a lot of people don't have the same ease of conversation that I do. And so I never knew. And so once we realized that was my superpower, it was like, well, holy crap, how do we monetize the fact that I can talk? It seems really like mundane to me. Like, you can't monetize the fact that I can talk. Everybody can talk. But like when I think about Jason, like his strengths were really dependability and attention to detail, and those little pieces that have to go together to be a really strong underwriter. And so once we had a really good handle on what our superpowers were, it was really easy to make sure that we were staying in our lanes. And I actually even took David Ricardo's model of trade, which is, he's an economist. And it's like comparative advantage. And it talks about why you can't get outside of your production's possibility frontier if you're not trading. And so I kept thinking about it. I was like, wait a second, that's what you're doing on a team too. Your team is specializing in their superpowers, and then you're trading. And that's how you're going to get out of the production's possibilities that every other team that's wearing all the hats, that's where they're producing, is right there on that curve. But if we specialize in trade, we're going to be able to get outside the curve. And that's going to give us a better position than pretty much anybody else that isn't focusing in their superpowers.
So you alluded to being involved in a coaching program. Tell me about that coaching program. Was that I imagine it was an expensive purchase. Was that a difficult decision to make, and what impact has that coaching program had on your investing?
There's actually a funny story that goes with it. So we met Joe Fairless in, I think, 2017.
I thought you were going to say Joe Fairless, because just by the questions that you were asking your friends, I'm like, that sounds like Joe Fairless kind of questions.
Yeah. And back then, program was uber affordable.
Mm.
But me and my teacher mindset, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so expensive. So we did a little bit of research and we found Joe's first coach. And we were like, dude, if he produced Joe, we can just go with him. And he was about half the price of Joe. So let's go out a year and a half. It took us a lawyer to get out of that program. We floundered in it for a year and a half. And by the time we went back to Joe, he was a little less than triple the price. And at that point, we were just like, well, dang it. And we talked to him, and I don't remember all the internals of how it worked out, but we figured out how to get it paid for, and we've been with him ever since. And it's been really great. Like, when we've been in trouble with deals and we're trying to get stuff done, we actually get to talk to him, and he helps us prioritize and he helps us get everything figured out. And the big takeaway from that is, when you find a coach or a mentor that you want to be working with, to figure it out, call them, beg, cry, figure out a payment plan, whatever they will let you do, but go with who you originally want to go with, because at the end of the day, you're probably still going to wind up with them, and they're probably going to be more expensive, and you will have burned all the time it took you to realize that. So for us, I cost us a year and a half, and I cost us, a significant amount of money, because my teacher brain wouldn't say, oh yeah, we should absolutely pay, like, I think it was $12,000. And my teacher brain was like, oh my God, that's so much money. And looking back on it now, I'm like, man, I was stupid. But it was the mindset thing. I wasn't there mentally.
I talk about this with some frequency, but us teachers and public service workers, police officers, firefighters, social workers, we have this inherent, it's a limiting mindset. It's kind of a small mindset where we see these big numbers and
Freak
we just,
out.
yeah, we freak out because, like, God, $12,000. I mean, that could be like a third or a fourth of our annual salary. And we're like, oh my gosh, I can't possibly spend this. What if it doesn't work? Am I just, flushing money down the toilet? And it's oftentimes really hard for these kind of lower wage public workers to have this bigger mindset to say, like, no, it's 12,000 or 15 or 20,000, but look at all you're going to get for it. Look at the network that you're going to be exposed to. And that's not to say that these things cannot turn out badly, because there are bad coaches out there, but the price should not be the automatic deal killer. So
Absolutely.
if listeners are if you're finding yourself with this small mind and thinking, I would never pay 5 figures for a mentor or a coaching program, really challenge yourself into thinking why you're thinking that way, and to see if there's, if it really could be worth it. I want to ask you about, Angel, the bad coach that you had. And you don't have to tell us who it was, but looking back on it, what were the red flags? And, what was your takeaway from that experience? Was there a moment where you said, like, oh man, I should have known better, or, when they said this or did that, I should have known better?
Yeah.
What were your
Well,
takeaways?
it wasn't that this person was a bad coach. It was that their program was not what we were actually looking for. And so I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to put in the work. It was kind of like wholesaling multifamily, but kind of not. And then the coach was entitled to 50% of, I forget exactly what it was, but it was like into perpetuity. Like, we didn't know when it was going to end. And it was never one-on-one calls. It was never one-on-one coaching. It was always group calls. And there were just, I guess those are kind of the things that didn't really mesh. And wholesaling multifamily was not what we wanted to do, but it was so much cheaper. And so it's that mindset, right? And now I look at it, and at this point, we've spent well over 6 figures in coaching, but we have literally tripled our net worth. And so you're going to get what you invest in. You're going to get what you pay for. And the cost or the investment can absolutely be limiting. So don't think that you got to go find the $100,000 coach right out of the bag. You need somebody that's just a few steps ahead of you. somebody that's like still active in the field, still doing deals, still knows how to help you with whatever part of real estate you want to get into or whatever you want to get into, period. But like Jonathan said, don't let price be the single determinant, because you might find yourself in a situation like us where we got lucky that we had a lawyer friend that was willing to help us out for cheap, but not everybody gets that same luxury. And you could wind up in a financially more expensive situation trying to get out of a program when, had you just started with one of the ones you had in mind to begin with, you'd be much happier.
Yeah, and I think the coaching program you choose should match up with your drive and what you're trying to do. So I would imagine that being a part of Joe Fairless's mastermind group coaching program, you're going to want to bring your A game. Don't get into a coaching program like that if you're just like, oh, wanting to dip your toe in and, oh, I still have my full-time job and I just kind of want to do something fun on the side. Because I imagine, just by, what I do know of Joe and from reading his book, he's going to have high expectations. And so I know, I'm pretty sure one of his requirements is you have to have a thought leadership platform. And it takes time, it takes money, it takes energy. And so if you're not willing to do stuff like that, it's okay, but don't get involved with someone who's going to have those sky high expectations. So looking back on when you were shopping coaches and considering coaches and mentors, what questions do you wish you would have asked during that time to maybe avoid some of the pain that you went through?
I think you need to know how much they're going to help you. Are they willing to hold your hand? Are they not? I'll be honest. Joe has held our hand, but that was never the agreement from the beginning. It was not like an accountability coach where they're going to follow up with you. Did you do what you say you were going to do? Did you do this? Did you do this? That's not the way he is. Now, he'll talk to us whenever we call. We can line up. We can meet with him once a week if we wanted to. And we don't. And I just think you need to find out, like, is this coach going to match up with your needs? Do you need somebody that's going to call you weekly and follow up with you and make sure that you're taking care of the things you're going to take care of? There are coaches out there that do that. And if that's what you need, that's what you need to be looking for. And like I said, Joe has absolutely held our hands, but that was not what we signed up for. Like, when our first deal was going sideways, we were absolutely on the phone with him like every other day. Because I was like, I can't do this. I got to do this. And he's like, Angel, stop. No, you don't need to do this. You don't need to do this. You need to do this. You don't need to do this. Don't need to do this. He's like, do that one thing and call me back when you get it done. And it was just the clarity of, like, just being able to prioritize things. And I'm not real great at that. I'm awesome at big pictures. Details aren't really my thing, but details are Jason's thing. So we can kind of play off ourselves that way. But I feel like even though we were not in a coaching program where our hand was going to be held when things get tough, and they will, you want a coach that's going to meet you where you are. And it's just going to understand. And when, you're like, Joe likes people that are going to be on their A game. They're going to take care of things. When we first got into Joe's program, we had like 1 or 2 single families. I don't know what Joe saw in us. Looking back, I don't see it. I don't know. It's just weird the way those things work out sometimes. And I'm glad it worked out. We've had a lot of success, and I attribute a lot of that success with Joe. And then we coach with Trevor McGregor too. And I attribute a lot of our success with them, where we started looking at some different coaching programs with another group, and they're helping us out too. And I say these things and I talk about the different coaches and the different mentors because we started thinking about things like in terms of like golfers, like Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan, or, they had free throw coaches, they had putting coaches, they had drive coaches, they had all of these different kinds of coaches. Yeah, there was the team coach or the main coach, but then they had all these specialized coaches too that really helped them amp up every piece of what they're doing. And if you've read Atomic Habits, like, he talks about having the trailer that was all white so that he could see the specks of dust on the bikes, because each one of those specks of dust, if he could get it clean, could increase speed and increase aerodynamics. And it's those things, getting that specificity and getting each one of those pieces working, that is really incredible. And I attribute so much of our success to the people that are around us and helping us.
Really powerful stuff. Thank you, Angel. We're getting towards the end of our conversation here. I want to ask you about your why. So you and your family have a really strong why. Can you tell us about, I know you've got a child with a significant medical condition. So can you walk us through kind of what's going on with that, and how does that drive your real estate investing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Anson was born in 2010, and on one of the ultrasounds, they found a spot on his heart, which was a soft marker for Down syndrome. And so we wound up in a level 2 sonogram, and the doctor was like, "Oh no, I'm 98% sure it's not Down syndrome because we don't see this, this, and this." And we were like, "Oh, okay." And we didn't do like the amnios. We didn't do all the other testing because, number one, it didn't matter. We were still going to have Anson. I was 33. We didn't start having kids, so I was already in my 30s. We were like, we don't get to pick and choose. And so, we had Anson, and we were, I guess he was, how old was he? He would have been 7 or 8 but he was probably about 6 when Jason started realizing that there were going to be some pretty significant medical costs. And that was really when we realized that we needed the scale of multifamily that wouldn't be provided through residential. And Anson has a condition called Dup15q. It doesn't have a cute name because when he was diagnosed, there were literally 742 diagnosed cases in the world. We don't get a lot of research. I think we have a couple of mice now that have been, I guess, manufactured to have the same disorder so that they can do some testing. If you are animal rights, I'm sorry. Having Dup15q doesn't make you less of a person. It just, like, Anson has profound autism. He's 12. He's still in diapers. He's got like 150 words. He doesn't understand self-help. He does understand that he wants to drink water and eat goldfish. So he'll say goldfish even though they're cheddar bunnies. We went organic about 4 years ago, and he hasn't caught on that they're cheddar bunnies and not goldfish, because I guess they taste the same. But his needs just kind of grew over time, and we decided that we wanted to have a foundation that helps people with rare diseases and helps their families, helps with education, and just helps with awareness of these rare diseases that are out there, because they can be really hard. And like Dup15q is the second leading genetic cause for autism. I think we have way more diagnoses out there, but a lot of people, when they get the autism diagnosis, they don't do further genetic testing. And so there could be a whole lot more people out there with Dup15q that we don't know about because they didn't do the further genetic testing. And so that's kind of where the foundation would come in, with the awareness and increasing awareness, maybe even helping with some of the costs associated with that genetic testing at some point once we were up and going, because what we would like to do is leave that behind as a legacy that is funded by an endowment and goes on into perpetuity for helping raise awareness, support families, and support the needs of individuals with these rare diseases. And so that is the why that really drives us. But I will say, those big, huge whys aren't going to make you get up in the morning and do a meetup, because they're huge and it's really hard to wrap your head around them. So kind of backing up, you need like intermediary whys that will make you get up and start that meetup, because the big ones, they're so big and outrageous, those big, hairy, audacious goals, they're really hard to wrap your head around. And I think it's difficult for those super big goals to be strong drivers. I mean, yes, it's a driver for us, but again, at 9 in the morning, 10 in the morning, when I'm depressed and I don't want to get up, I haven't taken a shower in 5 days, and the last thing I want to do is turn Zoom on and hold a meetup. That big, hairy, audacious goal did not drive me to get up and turn my computer on and start my lights and start that Zoom. It was that we're trying to build a brand, and I committed to doing this. I got to start the Zoom. So you need those intermediary commitments and goals to keep you going, even though you absolutely also need that huge, crazy, audacious goal out there too.
Love that. Angel, if listeners want to connect with you, learn more about you and Academy Presents and Dupe 15Q, where would you like to send people?
Um, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Angel Williams. On Facebook, I'm Angel Renee. We have a Facebook community, which is I think it's the Academy Presents REI Rocks community. That's our Facebook group. We've got a couple of different websites. We have the academypresents.com, and then we have lorrencapital.com, and that's our investing arm. But I answer my messages on LinkedIn. It's a pretty good place to get a hold of me, and I'm pretty sure my cell phone number is out there somewhere, and I give it out a lot. I'm not going to give it out on here because I don't know how long this is going to be running, and it may be running like 10 years from now when we're way more successful and we've got 50 million calls coming in all the time. But I absolutely text back and I message back, and so we're pretty easy to get a hold of.
Great. Angel, this was a fantastic conversation. I sincerely appreciate you sharing your wisdom and expertise and some of your struggles and just being so transparent with me today. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you for just having me on and letting me share.
Listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation, I hope you did. I hope you got tons of value out of it. Be sure to hit subscribe and engage where you see it. Feel free to reach out to either one of us. We would love to chat with you. Until next time, take care.